Honorable Abdul Samad Dasuki, PDP Sokoto, on the floor of the National Assembly, raised the alarm that the harmonized copy that I passed in this National Assembly is different from the gazetted copy. And another Honorable Mansour Soro, he said, the errors were not accidental or coincidental, they were intentional. Meaning there was an intentional act of criminality to forge a document and impose it on the people. So even if it is one provision that was intentionally altered, the whole tax law is now forged. What a responsible president would have done is to pull it back so that it does not form a national and international embarrassment. Before people even begin to ask, if they had pulled it the first day, nobody will want to know the details. They will say, oh, it must be an unintentional act. But doubling down on your criminality means that it is an intentional act to forge a document, and you now want to impose the forgery on Nigerians. That is unacceptable. That forged tax law should be pulled down immediately. It is illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's criminal. They cannot impose it on Nigerians.
Can you clearly state what specific disparities the opposition has identified between the tax bill passed by the National Assembly and the version currently being implemented by the federal government?
Well, let me first of all say that it is very disheartening that in a nation like ours, that the President and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces can append his signature on a forged document and wants to impose it on the people. You know, the sad thing about this government is the impunity that they display when an abnormality is noticed. A president who has any sense of shame would have immediately pulled that tax. Immediately there was a notification to him that the tax is forged, because forgery is a criminal offense. Honorable Abdul Samad Dasuki, PDP Sokoto, on the floor of the National Assembly, raised the alarm that the harmonized copy that I passed in this National Assembly is different from the gazetted copy. And another Honorable Mansour Soro, he said, the errors were not accidental or coincidental, they were intentional. Meaning there was an intentional act of criminality to forge a document and impose it on the people. So the mens rea has been proved. In other words, the intention of the forgers. Now, what are the differences? The whole idea of forging this tax document is to usurp. The executive wants to use the forgery to usurp the powers of the legislature and the powers of the courts. In the harmonized copy, it was the legislature that was given the power of oversight. Of course, that's even a constitutional right. And reporting back mechanism. In the forged copy, in other words, in the gazetted copy, the power was taken away and now given to tax authorities. Power of coercion. So they can now arrest you. And not only arresting you, the power given to them in the harmonized copy is to investigate. The power now that was forged was they have now been given power to arrest. And not just to arrest. They've been given power to assess your tax. Anything they want to say you are going to pay. And then they have the power now to go to your bank to seize your money in the bank. And they have the power to use your money to purportedly pay your tax without court order. In law, we call it garnishee proceeding. Without court, the tax authorities now have the power to prosecute and to be the judge. Now, when they do such things and you want to go to court, then the forged tax document, in other words, because it's not a law, it's not an act, it's forged. It cannot be an act. An act is passed when the National Assembly passes the act and the president assents to it. Any other alteration, even if it is a punctuation mark, is not the act passed by the National Assembly and is void. So you have obvious contradictions between the harmonized copy by the National Assembly and the forged copy. In other words, the purported gazetted copy, which is now forged, because any alteration to the original document and the originators of the document openly disowns it. That's forgery. When people say it is some provisions, because that is about in section 3, is in section 39, in section 40, section 60, 68, 69, etc. Altered. Let me tell you, if you have 7 credits in your WAEC and you go on your own, the 7 credits is what you got and why I gave you the certificate. And you go on your own and add 1 credit. That makes it 8. You don't say, no, use the certificate. After all, you have 7 credits. There's only 1 that is, added. Go ahead and be using it. No, the whole document is now forged because of that 1 credit you added. So the certificate is fake, forged. So even if it is 1 provision that was intentionally altered, the whole tax law is now forged. What a responsible president would have done is to pull it back so that it does not form a national and international embarrassment. Before people even begin to ask, if they had pulled it the first day, nobody will want to know the details. They will say, oh, it must be an unintentional act. But doubling down on your criminality means that it is an intentional act to forge a document, and you now want to impose the forgery on Nigerians. That is unacceptable. That forged tax law should be pulled down immediately. It is illegal, it's unconstitutional, it's criminal. They cannot impose it on Nigerians.
Are you considering the fact that it has got to this point where it is already a law? Are you considering the fact?
No, it's not a law.
You're calling for
Yes.
it to be withdrawn at this point in time.
Yes, because 1, it's not a law.
And you're thinking that Nigerians should be worried over this particular document.
You know, the extent of the disregard for rule of law of Tinubu's government has become so high that I don't think Nigerians are even surprised. The rule of law, this is a government, sorry to say it. You know, one human rights activist said that this government is the government of criminality. And the police is hounding him around. But they have proved him right. Because the president appended his signature on a forged document. And rather than shamefully and apologetically pulling it, they are even considering
That's a weighty
implementing it.
allegation.
Now,
Substantiated.
now, what else am I substantiating? Am I a member of the National Assembly? A member of the National Assembly came out on the floor of National Assembly and said that the copy that he passed as a member of the National Assembly is different from the gazetted copy. That is the forged copy. So, what else do I need to prove? They are the ones who made the law. They know the contents of their law. And has the government disclaimed it? No. Has there been any serious talk that it was not altered? I even heard Mr. Taiwo, the chairman of the tax reform, he said, and it's laughable, because he said, yes, if there are alterations, they can go ahead and implement the other ones until the alterations are sorted out. So that's a subtle admission that the document is forged. Sorry, you don't do like that. The law that they have is not the law that was passed by the National Assembly. So what that means is that we do not have any tax law, and nobody should go and impose or implement any law on the Nigerian people that is fake. So this government has displayed that it's a fake government, and it is quite criminal what was done. So what the president should do immediately is to set up a panel, that is if he's not involved in the forgery, so that they will determine the people that did it and bring them to trial and send them to jail. So nothing is surprising about Tinubu's government in terms of disregard to rule of law. He started with it, and throughout his tenure, it is running. Tinubu went to court, the Supreme Court, to get a judgment that the Supreme Court should give a judgment that the federal government should transfer the money of the local government direct to them. More than 1 year, it is not done. That is disregard to rule of law. The judgment of the Supreme Court is sacrosanct. And it is laughable when he was in the caucus meeting that he was telling the governors, obey this law, or I will come in. Let me tell you the truth. Tinubu does not have the intention for the governors to obey the law.
That's an allegation.
No, it's not an allegation. The judgment of the Supreme Court is to be obeyed immediately. The governors have no business. The governors have no business in the judgment of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said the federal government should pay the money of the local government direct to them. So what are you calling the governors for? What business do the governors now have in this implementation? It has become a law, and the president is the one that implements the law of the land. And the Supreme Court judgments are part of our laws. So if the president is not implementing the law, why is he not doing it? I have the right to project the reasons, because he is in absolute disregard to rule of law. And I am telling you that the only reason is because he intentionally wants the money to stay with the governors so that they will use it to fight for his re-election. That's my conclusion.
Sorry.
Then let him tell us why he has not obeyed the Supreme Court judgment for more than 1 year.
All right, let's take a look at the...
And let me point out, if the governors, for instance, were obeying the Constitution, would he have needed to go to court? Now he went to court, got judgment, and came back again and be telling the governor, obey. No, what business has the governors? You went to the court against them, and then the court gave you judgment, and you're telling them, obey. I mean, this government is a joke.